humanity had always known the curators. Ancient, mysterious beings who were said to have guided humanity's rise from the ashes of past wars. They had watched over humanity for centuries, their wisdom protecting the galaxy from disaster. Yet, despite their power, they had vanished without a trace. It was believed they had left the galaxy forever, leaving behind only the faintest traces of their knowledge. That is, until now, the Starship Horizon drifted through the endless void of space. A routine mission, nothing more than another journey to explore the distant colonies. Yet, as the crew gazed out into the vastness, something changed. A signal came in a strange, broken message that made no sense but was impossible to ignore. Captain Maya Devereaux stood in the control room, her brow furrowed as she listened to the transmission. "What is this?" she whispered. The words were garbled, but the tone carried urgency. "It's a message from the curators." It was impossible. The curators had been gone for centuries, and now, a message from them? It didn't make sense. But as the crew began to analyze the signal, they realized one thing: the message wasn't just old, it was calling them. Somewhere deep in the galaxy, something had been waiting, something ancient, and it wanted them to find it. The horizon altered course, heading toward the source of the signal. The crew, skeptical but intrigued, couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The journey was long, but the closer they got, the more unsettled they became. The stars above seemed to shift and strange energy readings began to spike. As they neared the source, a cold sense of dread began to settle over them. "Something isn't right," Lieutenant Ryan said, his voice trembling as he scanned the readings. "The energy levels, they're off the charts." Maya turned to face him. "Prepare for landing. We need to find out what's going on." The planet they arrived on was desolate, empty, with no signs of life. Yet at its center, an enormous structure stood, covered in strange symbols and ancient carvings. It was like something from a dream, something that didn't belong in the galaxy. "We found it," Maya said, her voice quiet with awe and fear. "The curator's tomb? Or something more?" As they entered the structure, the temperature dropped. A strange hum filled the air, like the heartbeat of the planet itself. The walls seemed to pulse with an eerie light. There was no turning back now. They reached a central chamber, and in the middle of it stood a large, stone-like object, smooth, black, and humming with power. The message from the curators had led them here, to this very spot. But what was it? "Captain, look," Ryan said, his voice shaking as he pointed toward the object. It was slowly beginning to open, revealing a hidden chamber inside. As the doors parted, a bright light flooded the room, blinding the crew momentarily. Then, they saw IT.I in the center of the chamber, lay what appeared to be a figure, its body encased in a cocoon of energy. It was unlike anything they had ever seen. The figure was humanoid but not human, its features too perfect, too symmetrical to be anything but otherworldly. The curators. Maya's heart raced as she realized the truth. The curators hadn't disappeared. They had been in stasis, waiting for humanity to be ready. Ready for what? They didn't know yet, but the answer was hidden in the depths of this strange place. The figure began to stir, and Maya instinctively stepped back, her hand reaching for her weapon. But nothing happened. The figure was still. Then, a voice echoed through the chamber. It was soft, deep, and ancient, reverberating inside their minds. The curators were speaking. "Humanity has returned. You are ready." The words sent a shiver down their spines. Maya stepped forward, her mind racing. "Ready for what?" The curator's voice responded, but this time it wasn't just words, it was knowledge. A flood of ancient memories, forgotten truths, and impossible realizations filled Maya's mind. The curators had been preparing humanity for something beyond their understanding. But now that the time had come, the stakes were higher than anyone could have imagined. "The galaxy is in danger," the voice said, its tone filled with both warning and hope. "A great darkness is coming, and only you, the children of Earth, can stop it." Suddenly, the figure's eyes opened. They were not eyes at all, but swirling pools of energy, ancient and powerful. The curators were alive again. But what had they been waiting for? What was this great darkness they spoke of? Before Maya could ask another question, the lights in the chamber flickered and the ground trembled beneath their feet. The ship's emergency alarms blared as a message came through from the horizon. Warning. Unknown ship approaching. Large and hostile. It's here. The great darkness was not a myth. It was coming, and it was far too close. Captain Samir Knox stood at the edge of the observation deck, his eyes staring into the void of space. The stars stretched endlessly before him, cold and indifferent. His mission was simple: explore new worlds, make contact with any signs of intelligent life. But today, something felt different. The usual calm was replaced with a deep sense of unease. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The Endeavor, a sleek starship designed for deep space exploration, had just received a strange transmission, a signal buried in the deep space frequencies. It wasn't a random burst of static. It was deliberate, organized. And it was calling them. "Captain," Lieutenant Jess Wong said, walking up behind him, "we've traced the signal. It's coming from the Zarak Nebula." Samir turned to her, a frown crossing his face. "The Zarak Nebula? That's where the old war was fought." Jess nodded, her expression tense. "Yes. It's said to be the site of the greatest battle humanity ever fought. No one has ever been able to pinpoint exactly what happened there. The records were lost." Samir exhaled sharply. The Great War. It had been centuries since humanity fought the alien race known as the Draxians. The war was brutal, and humanity had barely survived. The Zarak Nebula was the graveyard of that war, a place where millions of ships had fought and fallen, leaving nothing behind but debris and silence. "Prepare the ship," Samir ordered, his voice steady. "Set course for the Zarak Nebula. Let's see what's out there." As the Endeavor made its way toward the nebula, the Zarak Nebula had always been a source of mystery, a place people avoided. And now, they were heading straight toward it. The atmosphere in the ship was thick with unease. The crew of the Endeavor had no idea that their journey would uncover the truth about the war they thought was long over. When they arrived, the nebula greeted them with swirling clouds of gas and dust. The stars were hidden behind a thick veil of darkness. The signal was growing stronger, coming from a point deep within the nebula. Samir couldn't help but feel a chill run down his spine. They were close now. Very close. "Captain," Jess called out from the comm station, "I've found it. There's something out there, something massive. It's not a ship, it's a station, a huge one. It's been dormant, but the signal, it's coming from inside." Samir's pulse quickened. "A station? Here?" He gave the order to approach carefully. As they neared the station, the enormity of it became clear. It was an ancient structure, built by the Draxians, long abandoned, or so they thought. It was a graveyard of war, a place where the final battles had been fought. But now, it seemed to have come alive again. "Open a communication channel," Samir said, his voice steady despite the rising tension. "Let's see who's home." Silence answered. Then, an eerie voice echoed through the comm system. It was mechanical, distorted, but unmistakable. "Humanity," the voice said, "you have returned." The crew froze. Samir's heart raced. "Who are you?" he demanded, trying to keep his voice calm. The voice replied slowly, "We are the last of the Draxians. The war never ended. It was only paused. Humanity will pay for its survival." A cold shiver ran through the crew. The war hadn't ended. It had been waiting. Samir glanced at Jess, who looked just as shocked as he felt. "Prepare for battle," Samir ordered. "We're not leaving this place without answers." The Endeavor's weapons systems powered up, and the crew braced themselves. Suddenly, the ship shuddered. A massive force rocked the hull. They were under attack. Draxian warships, long thought destroyed, emerged from the depths of the nebula. Their weapons crackled with deadly energy as they surrounded the Endeavor. "We're not going to survive this," Jess shouted as the ship's shields flickered under the assault, but Samir's mind was racing. The Draxians had rebuilt their forces. They hadn't been defeated, they'd been waiting. They had been watching humanity grow strong enough to face them again. The war was never over. It was just waiting for the right moment to begin anew. "Hold on!" Samir shouted, gripping the console in front of him. "We need to take out their command station. Focus all fire on the center of the fleet." The Endeavor's cannons fired, ripping through the blackness of space, striking Draxian ships. Explosions lit up the dark nebula like flashes of lightning. But the Draxians were relentless. More ships appeared, and the battle grew fiercer. Suddenly, a voice came through the comms again. "You cannot win. The war has already been decided." But Samir wasn't listening anymore. His mind raced. There was a way to end this, he just needed to find it. "Target their power core." Samir yelled. "All weapons, fire now!" With a final, devastating blast, the Draxian command ship exploded. Silence followed. The nebula, once filled with battle, was now eerily still. Samir stood, breathing heavily. The war was over, at least, for now. But something nagged at him. What else had the Draxians been hiding? Had they really been watching humanity all these years, just waiting for their chance? He glanced at the crew. "We've won this battle," he said, his voice low. "But the war. It's far from over. In the quiet corners of the galaxy, humanity had flourished under the guidance of the curators. Ancient beings who had watched over humanity's rise, they left behind secrets, knowledge, and warnings. But for centuries, the curators were gone, vanished without a trace. The galaxy was at peace, or so it seemed. Captain Olivia Kane of the starship Vanguard stood on the observation deck, looking out at the stars. The crew had just completed a mission on a distant planet, but something was off. The usual calm of space felt heavy today, like the calm before a storm. As she stared into the void, a strange message came through the ship's comms. It wasn't a normal distress signal. It was a riddle. The words seemed to shimmer in the air before her eyes, impossible to ignore. "The prophecy lies in the heart of the stars, where the last of the curators waits. Seek and you shall find what has been hidden for ages." Olivia's pulse quickened. The curators. The legends spoke of them mysterious, powerful, and ancient. Some believed they had left the galaxy to its own devices. Others whispered that they were still watching, waiting for the right moment to return. No one knew for sure. "Lieutenant Harris," Olivia said, turning to the officer beside her, "trace the signal. I want to know where it's coming from." Harris nodded, fingers dancing across the controls. "It's coming from the Zara system, Captain. A planet called Viora." Olivia frowned. The Zara system was known for being unstable, surrounded by radiation storms and debris. No one dared to venture there. But the message was clear. The prophecy of the curators, it had to be real. And if there was even the smallest chance of uncovering the truth, they had to go. "Set course for Viora," Olivia ordered. "Prepare for a rough ride. We leave immediately." The Vanguard slipped through the endless void, the stars guiding their way. As they neared the Zara system, the radiation storms began to churn, causing the ship to shake. The crew held their breath as they navigated through the chaos, their eyes fixed on the coordinates. When they finally reached Viora, the planet was nothing like they expected. The surface was covered in craters, and the skies were a swirl of unnatural colors. There was no sign of life, no movement. But the signal, the prophecy, was stronger here. "This is it," Olivia said, her voice tense. "Let's find out what the curators left behind." They landed on the surface, and as the crew disembarked, they were immediately struck by a sense of overwhelming silence. The planet felt dead, like it had been abandoned for eons. But Olivia couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't alone. The team moved cautiously through the barren landscape, following the signal that seemed to lead them deeper into the planet's rocky surface. Eventually, they came upon a massive, ancient structure, half buried beneath layers of dust and debris. It was built from materials that seemed to shimmer in the dim light, glowing faintly with energy. "This place, it's old," said Sergeant McCall, his voice filled with awe. Olivia stepped forward, her hand brushing against the smooth surface of the door. It slid open without a sound, revealing a vast chamber inside. At the center of the room stood a pedestal, and on it rested a crystal. The air around it hummed with energy, like it was alive. "This is it," Olivia whispered, her heart racing. "The heart of the prophecy." As she approached the pedestal, a voice echoed through the chamber. It was low and resonant, carrying the weight of ages. "Humanity," the voice said, "you have come far. But the truth you seek comes at a cost." Olivia's breath caught in her throat. The voice, it was coming from the curators. The crystal began to glow brighter, and before her eyes, the image of an ancient curator appeared, its form translucent but unmistakable. It looked at Olivia with eyes filled with knowledge, as if it had been waiting for her. "The war you have feared is not the one you think. The darkness is not a force from outside, but one that lies within. Humanity has been chosen, but not as saviors. You are the ones who must decide whether you will destroy or protect the galaxy. The prophecy is a choice, not a fate." Olivia's mind raced. What was the curator talking about? Destroy or protect? What did it mean? Before she could ask, the curator continued. "The darkness you seek to fight is already within you. You will either rise to face it, or you will become it." Suddenly, the ground trembled, and the room filled with blinding light. The crystal shattered, and the vision of the curator vanished, leaving only silence. "What the hell was that?" McCall shouted, stepping back from the pedestal. "We've only just begun to understand," Olivia replied, her mind spinning. The prophecy wasn't just a warning, it was a choice. And the fate of the galaxy rested in their hands. The true darkness wasn't an enemy from the stars. It was something far more dangerous, humanity's own potential for destruction. The crew stood there in stunned silence, realizing the weight of the decision they now faced. There was no going back. The prophecy of the curators had revealed its truth, and now they had to decide, would they rise or would they fall? Captain Elena Harper stood on the bridge of the Starlight, staring at the dark void of space. The mission was supposed to be routine, nothing more than a simple survey of a distant galaxy. But something had changed. The quiet hum of the ship's engines now felt uneasy, like an ominous prelude to something she couldn't understand. Her crew, as calm as they usually were, sensed it too. It was in the way they moved, the way their eyes flickered nervously as they carried out their duties. The curators, those ancient beings who had guided humanity through its darkest moments, had always been a mystery. But this felt like something more than mystery. A message had arrived from an unknown source, encoded in a frequency humanity hadn't used in centuries. It was clear the truth awaits in the heart of the nebula. The curators have hidden it, but not all of them agree with the path. "The heart of the nebula," Elena muttered to herself. The message had been disturbing, and yet something about it felt real. She turned to her first officer, Lieutenant Adrian Cole. "Prepare for a course change. Set a new heading for the Draker Nebula," she ordered. Adrian's face tightened with uncertainty. "Are you sure, Captain? The Draker Nebula is a dangerous place. The curators themselves warned us to stay away." "I know," Elena replied, her voice firm. "But that message, it's calling us. There's something we need to find." The crew worked quickly, adjusting the ship's course toward the nebula. As the starlight approached the heart of the Draker Nebula, the dark clouds of gas and energy thickened, and the stars seemed to fade away. The ship rocked as it entered the turbulent heart of the storm. Yet, in the distance, a glimmer of light appeared, an ancient structure floating in the void. The curators had once built structures like this, places of knowledge and power. But this felt different. Something was off. The ship docked, and Elena led her crew into the mysterious station. The air inside was thick with an ancient energy, and the walls hummed with power. As they ventured deeper into the station, strange symbols appeared, ones that no one had ever seen before. They seemed to shift, almost alive. They reached a central chamber, where a massive stone tablet stood. The symbols on the tablet glowed with an eerie light. As Elena approached, a voice echoed from the shadows. "You have come." Elena froze, her heart racing. The voice was deep, resonant, but also familiar. She turned slowly, her eyes scanning the darkness. "Who's there?" From the shadows, a figure stepped forward. It was tall, draped in flowing robes, and its face was hidden behind a mask. Elena's breath caught. She had seen this figure before during her time with the curators. This was one of them. "We have been waiting," the figure said. "You are the chosen one, Captain Elena Harper." "Chosen for what?" Elena demanded, her voice trembling. "What is this place? What's really going on?" The figure stepped closer, revealing its eyes deep, glowing orbs that seemed to pierce into her soul. "You don't understand. The curators were never united. There was always one who sought to control, to manipulate. The truth is that we betrayed you. We betrayed humanity." Elena's blood ran cold. "What are you talking about? Do you remember the stories you were told?" The figure continued. "The curators were your protectors, your guides. But there was one among us who saw humanity not as a creation to be nurtured, but as a weapon to be controlled. The prophecies you followed, the guidance we gave you, it was never for your benefit. It was to prepare you for a future where you would serve us." Elena staggered back, the weight of the words sinking in. "Betrayal?" "You," the figure nodded slowly. "I am one of the few who still remembers. I was there when the betrayal was set in motion. I helped create the prophecy, but I also created a plan to stop it." Elena's mind raced. Her whole life, everything she believed, everything she had been taught, was it all a lie? And the curators who stayed true to their mission? She asked, barely able to form the words. "What happened to them?" "They were silenced," the figure said, a bitter edge to its voice. "The one who betrayed humanity saw to it. He knew that a united curator force would never allow his plan to succeed. So, he fractured us. Some of us were left in the shadows, watching. Others were eliminated. Now, you must decide, Captain. Will you let this betrayal continue? Will you help us stop the one who betrayed your people?" Elena stood still, her mind spinning. She had always believed the curators were beyond reproach, but now she saw the truth. The galaxy was at the mercy of a long-forgotten war within the ranks of these ancient beings. A war that had never truly ended. "You have a choice, Elena Harper," the figure said again, its voice now colder. "Will you fight for humanity's freedom, or will you join us in our new order?" A chill ran through Elena's veins. She couldn't answer, not yet. The weight of the decision was too much. Betrayal had crept into the very heart of the curators, and now it threatened to consume everything. The figure stepped back into the shadows, its eyes still glowing. "The choice is yours. But choose wisely. The future of humanity rests on what happens next." As the figure disappeared, Elena was left alone, staring at the glowing tablet, the weight of the universe pressing down on her shoulders. The betrayal had begun, and she had to decide how to stop it, or if she would even be able to. The ancient throne room of House Valerian was silent. Dust hung in the air, as if time itself had forgotten the weight of what had happened here. The kingdom had fallen into ruin after the disappearance of its heir, Prince Eric Valerian, decades ago. No one knew what happened to him. Some whispered that he had been betrayed, others said he had died in exile. But now, on the eve of the kingdom's greatest crisis, there were rumors. Rumors of a return. Captain Mara Dunn stood at the edge of the grand hall, her boots echoing on the cold stone floor. The kingdom was on the brink of war, and the crown was desperate for a leader. The king had no heirs, and the throne was rightfully meant for Prince Eric. The problem was that no one had seen him in 20 years. She had been part of the royal guard that protected the royal family during the prince's youth. She had sworn to uphold the oath she made when she was a young soldier. But now, with the kingdom fractured and enemies surrounding them, her loyalty was torn. If Eric returned, would he be the leader they needed, or was he a ghost of the past? Her thoughts were interrupted by a sudden voice from behind her. "Mara." She turned to see her old comrade, Lieutenant Jarek Thorne. He had always been by her side, through battles and betrayals. His face was hard, but there was something in his eyes that Mara couldn't place a mix of hope and fear. "It's time," Jarek said softly. Mara nodded, her heart heavy. The throne room doors slowly creaked open. Inside, a figure stood in the shadow of the massive, ancient throne. His back was to them, but even in the dim light, Mara recognized the posture, the way he stood. "Prince Eric?" Mara whispered, as though speaking his name could shatter the fragile moment. The figure turned. For a moment, Mara couldn't breathe. The man standing before her was older than the prince she had known, a man shaped by time and struggle, but the eyes were unmistakable. Prince Eric had returned. "I have returned," Eric said, his voice quiet but carrying a weight that filled the room. "The kingdom calls for its heir, and I will answer." Mara took a step forward, but doubt clouded her thoughts. "Where have you been?" "We've searched for you, but you vanished without a trace." Eric's gaze hardened. "I had to disappear, Mara. For all our sakes. The truth about my disappearance is more dangerous than you can imagine." Jarek stepped forward, his voice tense. "Dangerous? How? What are you hiding, Eric?" Eric's eyes flicked to Jarek, and for a moment there was a flicker of something resentment, or perhaps guilt. "You wouldn't understand," he said, his tone cold. "I did what I had to do." The tension in the room grew thicker, and Mara could feel it in her bones. Something was off about Eric's return, something she couldn't place. He seemed different, as though the weight of the years had twisted him into someone she didn't fully recognize. "Mara, Jarek," Eric said, his voice suddenly softer. "I came back because the kingdom needs me. But we face a great threat. I've learned things. Things that you won't believe." "What do you mean?" Mara asked, trying to steady her voice. "I've been to the edge of the world, and beyond. I've seen things that have changed me. I'm not the same prince who left all those years ago." Before they could respond, the sound of footsteps echoed from the hallway. A figure appeared in the doorway, a woman draped in black robes. Her face was hidden behind a veil, but her presence was undeniable. She stepped into the throne room with purpose, her eyes locking with Eric's. "Eric, you've returned," the woman said, her voice smooth, almost a whisper. "And just in time." "Lyra," Eric said quietly. There was a tension in his voice that Mara couldn't ignore. The woman, Lyra, was someone he knew, someone with a past he had never shared. "Mara, Jarek, this is Lyra," Eric continued, his voice now strained. "She helped me in my time away." Lyra's eyes flicked over to Mara, her gaze icy. "The prince and I have much to discuss," she said, not bothering to hide the coldness in her voice. "The throne is not the only thing at stake. There are forces at play far more dangerous than any of you realize." Mara's hand instinctively went to the hilt of her sword. "What forces?" she demanded. Lyra's lips curled into a cold smile. "The truth is that the kingdom was never meant to be ruled by your bloodline, Mara. You've all been pawns in a much larger game. And now, the time has come to choose which side you're really on." Mara's heart raced. Betrayal? Was this what Eric had been hiding all these years? Had he been part of something dark? And Lyra, who was she really? The tension in the room was palpable, and every word felt like a trap. "What are you saying?" Jarek asked, his voice rising. Eric turned to face them, his face unreadable. "I've come back to reclaim what was always mine, but I'm not the man I was. I've made choices, and those choices have consequences." Mara's mind raced. The prince she had known was slipping away before her eyes. Eric had returned, but not for the kingdom. He had returned for something else. Something dangerous. "I don't know what game you're playing, Eric," Mara said, her voice low, "but I won't be a part of it." For a moment, the room was silent. Eric's eyes met hers, dark, intense, filled with a mixture of regret and something far colder. "You don't have a choice, Mara," Eric said. "None of us do."